Frank Moss, Phil Dyer, Michael Goodman, and at the moment Diane Marriott, who may or may well be coming, just depending on traffic and so forth. So I have to sign the declaration of the Secretary's office, which is over here, which I should do in front of everybody, and then it's been signed by Sally as well. Thank you. So item 4, Chairman's announcements. I'd just like to say that I hope everybody enjoyed their Jubilee Bank Holiday extended weekend and whatever festivities you did. Again, so just thank you to Sally, Sarah and everybody else that organised the event here that we had at the Greenfield Centre. I think it was a very good success. It was very good that we communicated with our parishioners and certain people within the community. I thought it was particularly appropriate that they came and they were looked after, shall we say. So thank you for that. And also thanks to Tim for distributing the cakes.
Just for the record, Chair, wasn't single-handed doing it. Adrian did, Sarah did, one or two of us did, but very well received. Well done again for your superb.
And again, thank you for Sarah to step in this evening to cover Sally, who is with her husband at the moment. So, item 5, the public participation. Hannah?
Yes, well, I was a little unsure as to whether I fell under item 5 or under 19, because I noticed that I think it was item 19 that was the complaint against business use on the common, and I didn't really put in a formal complaint, but the two seem to overlap, so
yeah, okay. So
just one linked to another. I've never been to one of these meetings before. Sorry, I'm speaking to 3 people's backs. I'll stand
okay.
somewhere else in a minute.
Just take a seat a moment. What I'll do is I'll just ask members if they're happy to bring forward the item agenda that is item 14. Are we happy to bring it forward to item 5,
yeah,
just for convenience?
Yeah.
Yes, and may I just very quickly, Chair, personally I am, thank you, just to, is it Hannah, I beg your pardon?
It is Hannah, yes.
Just to Hannah, yeah, I think Paul's point is, he wasn't aware, he doesn't believe you're the business owner who's made the complaint.
I'm not.
Yeah.
So that item is in line with our complaints procedure, that in spite of a decision being communicated to somebody, they've said in writing they're raising this complaint. Therefore, our complaint procedure quite rightly says that it's for the chair to bring it back to the next parish council meeting. So just so you're clear about procedure, that's what that is. As a member of the public, you're very welcome, and that's why I think that the chair was just clarifying that. But thank you. Back to you, Paul.
Thank you, Tim. It's probably easier to be seated where you are actually, even though it may be disrespectful that some members will. There we go, Richard, thank you. I've got that back to you. We can hear perfectly well. It's a smaller room rather than big also.
Okay, thank you. Well, hello everyone. My name is Hannah and I'm here. I suppose I am linked to the person who's made a formal complaint in that I use the business that person who's made a formal complaint. I took one of my children to. She runs a relaxation guided meditation centre session on the common for children and young people and their parents. The idea being their parents accompany them rather than it's for their parents. She started it after lockdown in 2020. As I hope most of you are aware, the levels of mental health crises in young people is quite serious. And she started it as a result of the local need for more support. She sells out all her sessions pretty immediately. She charges £10 an hour, so not an excessive fee, and has been told that she can no longer operate on both Hambrook and Finchley Common. This was the first. I was therefore told as a parent that these sessions were no longer available to my daughter, who started struggling with anxiety in lockdown 2020, March 2020, when we went into lockdown. This led me to question about business use on the common. I am aware that personal trainers use the common for local residents' fitness classes, and I am aware that some of them have not yet been shut down because they are not publicly, it's not known about. But really, what this I highlight, the point that I wanted to highlight tonight is, does our local parish council blanket ban all businesses that might want to use the common? And if they do, should we not consider business use of our common spaces case by case? And this is a very good example when it is in local residents' best interest, and there is no damage being done to either common and no inconvenience to local residents. Should we not consider that some of these businesses be allowed to continue when we are providing such an important service for both our young people and people also wishing to access fitness and physical health services?
Thank you, Hannah. Okay, so as Tim touched on, I'm aware that the business owner may well at a future stage come to the meeting and express her views as well. But I know that we're obviously answering this for you as a parishioner. Okay. Just thinking about this earlier, that I've got family and friends who are teachers. So what you were saying about with the impact the past few years have had for mental well-being, I completely understand the feedback through them has, how it's affected certain teachers and, of course, adults in various ways, negatively. Not everybody, but, there are obviously some that need this sort of coaching. With the email that you sent, which I read earlier, one note in it, you say, whilst I appreciate that Parish Council do not want to see our local common overwhelmed with all manner of businesses, I think that's one of the main points that we have discussed, is the fact that the common itself is used for walking, whatever activities, but you must have permission, anybody, to actually use the common specifically for business use. And I think that's, as noted in the previous meeting, that was why councillors came to that decision. We have granted permission during the COVID period, for obvious reasons, for the halls being closed. We're actually using the common for the facilities, exactly the same for fitness and so forth. But we did give it, and often we would give a month's extension when somebody asked to actually use it. So I think our understanding is that we try to help the community in that way as best we can until the halls became available, and then people that would use those normally, along with the people that would rent it from various halls around the parish, would go back to using it as they had done pre-COVID. So, can I ask councillors' thoughts on this and on the figures? I'll come back to Charlie, if that's okay. Charlie?
Yeah, I'm French, and I'm very sympathetic to what you're saying. However, the problem is we do get quite a few that turn up, try to do exercises, classes on the common. I've spoken to them myself and asked them, do they have permission, knowing that they don't, because we don't give permission because they're charging. The problem that we've got now is that if we allow everybody to start using the common, they won't be using all the village halls, they're down in the folk house, so that's where they can do their exercise classes. So at the moment, I'm on the Friendship Village Hall Committee, and we've got a number of people that rent there. They're very small turnover businesses, but they have a cost, and the money then goes to the village hall. But the trouble is, we do it for one, we do it for all. So I personally, my view is that we shouldn't allow people. Now, if she runs a class and then for free she takes you up onto the common and has a wander around with you and your children, that's fantastic. But I personally don't think that she should be charging you, and then we, making money from doing it. But she ought to be using a facility, a proper facility, with changing rooms, with toilets, because we do also have problems with people doing. Well, there's no toilet facilities, so they go up onto the common. There's a particular gym guy that has this gym, and people are peeing in the bushes, the women are, the men are, and it really is bad. So we've had to say no, we can't do it, because there's no toilet facilities, there's nothing for you to do there. Whereas if you hire them all here, there are toilet facilities, there are facilities, things for you to use. But that's as a council, that's my opinion.
Thank you, Charlie. Other people's thoughts? Members? Tim?
I'll just be very brief on this. I chaired the last meeting, so Hannah, so I can use your question. You asked 2 questions. Does the Parish Council have a blanket ban on businesses using our commons? The answer is yes. Brackets, if I may, if other people are using any of those public open spaces or any of our other facilities to run a business, they are doing so without permission. So that's the answer to your point there is yes, very clearly we have, as long as I've been involved, had that view. Charlie's touched on it. I mean, where do you draw the line? Because, and I'm saying this with respect and with a smile, everybody thinks they're special as a business. So I think you have to have that line. That is also something that's in line with a lot of the other rules and regulations that apply around common land and so on and so forth. Your second question was, do we consider individual requests? And the answer is yes. So Paul's gone back, and I got a little bit of the history there, but it goes back to 2020, I think. We had 2 businesses who wanted to use, one in French and this one, to use the public open spaces because of COVID. On both instances, everywhere was shut. So we agreed as a parish council that we felt for those exceptional purposes, that was reasonable. But in both, members were always very clear as far as they were concerned, it was for exceptional purposes only. The other business subsequently applied to continue. Paul had said there'd been a second lockdown then, so we granted an extension. But all of those venues, and Charlie's touched on it, and other places aren't operational again. So we don't feel, or I didn't feel, and the council didn't feel at the last meeting that those exceptional circumstances applied. We considered as an agenda item this particular request. Councillors did discuss it in court, and they concluded 2 things: that they upheld the council's decision that our commons and open spaces were not open freely for people to conduct their own businesses. And then in this specific instance, they agreed, therefore, that it would not be appropriate, since other businesses had been advised to cease doing so, that there was an exception made here. So I hope that just clarifies your 2 questions. And Paul wasn't able to be with us last month, so I chaired the meeting, so I just thought I'd give you that to answer your specific questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I've suffered health problems, over the past couple of years, and I spent a lot of time in hospital. So personally, I use pronounce it correctly, meditation, which helps me, to be honest. So I do empathise with what you're saying. I mean, we, as a parish council, are really actively trying to use everyone of all ages within the whole community to use sports, fitness, and that's why we have such a great variety here within the parish. But I think, also with other parish councils, now on a lot of the commons, you actually find big signs up saying that without the permission of a council, that the fitness instructor or whatever use it may be, does not have public liability insurance in place without the permission of the council to use it. So there's another reason why we have to be sensible and say that, if you haven't got public liability anyway, or if it's invalid because of that, then there's another reason we have to be responsible and touch on that, Hannah. So can I see a show of hands if you're still willing?
Sorry, am I allowed to come back just to answer some of the points that have been made, because I'm aware that I'm overstepping my 3 minutes, but otherwise I don't really see the point. It's not a discussion if I can't come back and answer just one or two of the points that have been made tonight.
In which case, there'll be a little bit of latitude, and if you can briefly summarise what
very
you
brief, just I think blanket ban is exactly the key thing, and I think actually you could say that in order to operate on the businesses and operate as a business, you have to tick certain things, and one of those could be insurance-based, and another of those, there are tick boxes that you could do. It's not an impossible idea, and it's something that I think would be a real shame if given, as I say, what we're looking at the moment in terms of mental health and lack of affordable facilities for young people in this area, and there is not a wide range of facilities for young people in this parish. It would be a real shame as a council to say blanket ban no, and perhaps we should look at a system whereby businesses can apply, and then as a parish council you can tick box and say what's important or not.
Okay, thank you for your thoughts on that.
Could I just come back on insurance? If the council has a blanket ban and therefore an activity that proceeds against the ban goes ahead, then it is illegal, because there is no validity of object in the contract with the customers.
Yes, I understand
therefore,
that.
No, it's a really important point.
No.
It's a really important point. Therefore, the insurance cannot be valid because the insurers of the person running the course has not got consensus to the contract.
Yes, but you misunderstand me.
No,
What I'm saying is if there isn't a blanket ban and people can provide their own business insurance, that no longer stands.
Okay, so Hannah, if you can make this point, finish on that, if that's okay.
Chair, I entirely accept the point, but I was starting from the point that the council's current policy is a blanket ban, unless there are exceptional circumstances like COVID. And therefore I was just saying that from where we're starting from, I'm picking up with the point that Charlie made earlier, this is a really important point. It's not about, oh, you haven't got insurance. It's the insurers will say, if there was a case, it isn't valid because you have no actual contract to do it with the council.
Charlie.
Could I also say that the commons are free? You know, the children, the number of children that we see playing on Friendship Common and in hilly fields and all around is fantastic. We don't charge a penny for anybody. It's maintained by the parishioners, you know, through the money that we get to maintain it. It's completely free, and as I say, the facilities are there in terms of village halls. There's all over the place. There's places you can rent and hire, and then to take the kids down onto the village, onto the village greens is fantastic, because that's where we see hundreds, don't we, going all the time around it. And it's free. We don't charge a bean.
Well, it's free. It's paid for by the money that we pay for taxes.
We don't charge people to use it.
It's not charged, but it's paid for through taxes. So it's not essentially free. We are paying for it as taxpayers. Sorry.
That's okay.
I have 3 children, and I use the Commons and Frenchay Common as well, which I find Frenchay Common at least has a few more facilities. I lived in Frenchay, I live in Winterbourne. I am fully aware of all the facilities, but anyway, that's a different matter. That's a matter of play parks and things like that. It's a different matter. I'm aware of the village halls, but that still comes at an extra cost for business owners, and meditation outside or running circuits around a common is very different from running circuits around a room like this or staring up at a neon light.
Okay. Thank you, Yvonne. Sharon, just very briefly.
Yeah, sorry, that was exactly the point I was going to make. I think if you're not comparing like for like, these courses might not want to be run inside a hall because you get a benefit from just being out in nature. It's an entirely different thing. Plus, I'd make the point that I believe if it's being grazed, then the farmer will be making money off of the grazing of the common land. So that's a way of using it where they're also making money. And I don't know about the cricket and the football, whether they have an income of their not-for-profit organisations.
Yeah, I mean, a technical point, I mean, for example, the Tucket Field, if we decide to, we would lease it to a farmer at a nominal rate. So the actual cows themselves will act as lawnmowers and clear the area. So it's not, I'm not sure you're quite touching correctly on what, the financial benefits are for the farmer, but that's something that I couldn't tell you specifically about, but I appreciate your point on that. Anyway, sorry, we must move on. So, are members happy that we uphold the decision that was made at the previous council meeting of the 9th of May? Can I show of hands, please? Thank you, members. Thank you for coming this evening. Okay, item 6 on the agenda is the decorations.
If I may, very quickly. Chair, sorry, Michael, I think it's just checked that other members of the public didn't have anything else to bring.
Okay. I did, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Sorry for interrupting before. I didn't realise the etiquette. But sorry, my name's Jamie. I came to a previous meeting where we discussed playgrounds and the potential for a space, a larger recreational area or a playground within Winterbourne that doesn't exist at the moment. And at the time it was discussed briefly. I'm just trying to find out if there's any update on location and allocation of funds.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. I do remember you as a parent at Franchise School previously.
That's right.
It is something that within the annual parish meeting we said that we had various aspirations of what we wanted to do within the next year, and the 2 play areas are ones that we've discussed, and as it is at the moment there will be a meeting tomorrow with the Parish Council to discuss some of the quotes we've had from companies for play leisure facilities within the area. So we're going to study the quotes of different specifications, different prices obviously they've quoted, different equipment. So it is something that we asked the clerk's office to actually go out and get tenders to do the work. So we're at a reasonably advanced stage on that. But obviously, as you appreciate, we need to look at the specification of different items, for the suitability of it in certain areas. So we've moved on a fair bit with that, and hopefully within a reasonable period we should come to a decision.
Thanks, that's grand. In terms of public knowledge of where, how, potentially when and so on, can we get information on that?
It's something that we would put on social media, something that we would put on our website. So it is something that we've done to promote, something that we've discussed various times at previous meetings about really the suitability of certain equipment within certain areas within the parish, and the type and the spread that we would need for different ages. So it is something I think, Richard, you're joining tomorrow on one of the groups to actually assess exactly what the quotes are and the breakdown of them.
Can we say just a little bit more on that?
If you want to briefly...
I was going to say, if Richard wants to say something, I'll just add something for Jamie.
Yeah, well, we're planning, we've got some estimates for a new play on the recreation ground, just inside the gate, alongside the school gym, fairly reasonable sized area, and also a play area on Hamburg Common, just opposite, on the corner, behind the line of seats, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Which we've got plans to do something there, and we are assessing quotes tomorrow.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, I'll just add quickly, Richard, before we cover most things, now Richard's stepped in, Jamie. I remember chairing that meeting, it was in December when you came. I hope you'll remember that I did say to you then that actually we welcomed some of the things that you brought along, because we were already looking at a number of different sites around the parish. We do from time to time make reference to it, particularly in the F&GP group. But yes, we have investigated a number of different sites around the parish. I think I said to you at the time, we were very confident that we should be in a position to look to do something both at the rec here and on Whiteshill Common. We've been exploring those. Between those of us that are involved in this working group that Paul's talked about, we have had dozens of meetings with potential suppliers, looking at different options and different ideas. We've refined some of those initial initially it was to give us advice as to what you could or couldn't do with those spaces. We've looked at that. We've created a consistent, almost specification, so people are quoting like for like. And we've got that. And as Richard said, the working group are meeting tomorrow to go through probably 8 or 10 different options for us to consider, and we'll then report back through committees on those findings. Just to give you a bit more of that detail, I've been involved heavily with it as well, as I say.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
With anything like that, I mean, what we need to do is to provide the best value for money we can using the money that's available to the parish, and also to get the best type of equipment we need for certain age groups within certain areas. So, I mean, often you might look at it and think that it takes months and months to come to decisions, but as it is at the moment, as you may know within the building industry and so on, there's the lead times of things seem to be taking an awful lot longer. And also, again, we must make sure that we're getting the best value for money that we can for our parishioners. So, thank you. And yeah, Tim's just put a note there saying that we actually have got specific earmarked reserves put aside for exactly these facilities. So, hence you can see our commitment to do it.
That's grand. Just have interest. Can we do the public get access to the reserves? I know I've seen the accounts before,
Yes.
but purely out of interest to sort of see what goes into what.
Yes, of course.
I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, you asked for that information last
We got it
time.
last time, so
Provided it with you.
new financial year, so I'm just
And
wondering.
we're into a new financial year and we're just finalising those. So,
Great.
Yeah, no, I think that.
That'd be great.
So just very quickly, has there been any polling of the community as to what they would see as useful in play areas?
I mean, I think with something like that, Sharon, that we would, as I said, look at the best demographics of the age groups that we need to do within certain areas. So obviously the feedback that you've given us, for example, is that you feel that there is a need for provision for the play area of a certain group, of age group within Hamlet Common at that area. Yes?
Personally, I was probably the rec, and my age groups are the whole, the whole lot, really.
Okay. That's exactly our point. So, for example, within the rec, we've got different play facilities of different groups, of different sports associations that provide facilities for tennis, for cricket, for football within that age group and other age groups.
Yeah.
And then, you know, obviously for different areas within, say, Friendship, the area that's provided there through the funding through Red Road Homes, the Section 106 money, is again a certain age group there. So we try, and the facilities here, try and really spread it within the whole community.
I totally understand, and I really appreciate that you're all putting your minds to this, but I just think that it's really good to engage the public and the people in this community on that sort of decision. So I think when you've assessed the quotes, not saying that you're not the best people to do it, but possibly there are people out there with kids who use these, I know you have children, that might also have a different opinion. I think it's worth gauging that before we spend money.
Yeah, also, I mean, the actual, say, the facilities, the providers that we've got the quotes from to discuss tomorrow, again, we would engage with them to know, you know, the best age groups, for example, that we do. I mean, it's something that we would get feedback through into the Parish Council office, through mothers and children, social media. Everything is fed back to us. So I wouldn't want to say that we're doing anything blind, quite the opposite. We've always had the feedback from people that you know, would help us make decisions. I mean, if you're talking about doing a specific you know, newsletter or
Questionnaire.
poll to everybody, then of course you'll get people without children that might come with a completely different decision than the one that we would come at. So, you know, I think something like that is difficult. The feedback we get, I think, is providing us to make a reasonable decision with the parishioners' money, with what we decide within the areas of suitable equipment for suitable ages. I can suggest you, Sharon. Thank you. So I think we've gone with a fair bit of latitude on public participation. You're very welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but please you don't have to. So moving on to item 6, it's a declaration of interest under the localist maps of 2011. So take your normal ones, Trevor and Nick. Thank you. For item 13 on the agenda, is a member of the Friendship Preservation Society, so there's nothing financial specifically within the presentation that he was making later on. I will declare an interest for that. And also there may well be a future application made under the Claire Windsor Foundation for the rental use of the Tucker Field, and myself and my wife have made a financial contribution to that foundation. Then I will declare an interest for that one as well. Is there any other items that maybe you need to declare an interest in? Anyone else? No? Okay, thank you. So item 7 is to approve the minutes of the council meeting that was held on the 9th of May 2022, which Tim kindly chaired. They have been distributed in the normal ways, so are members happy that they are true and accurate reflection of the meeting? Show of hands, please. Thank you very much. And we are noting the minutes of the planning committee meetings which were held on the 9th and the 23rd of May. Do we have any specific comments on those? No, thank you. And also the Finance and General Purposes meeting which was held on the 23rd of May. Members happy with those? No. Okay, I shall sign the minutes. Thank you. Thank you. So item 8 on the agenda is to answer questions from councillors. So do we have anything anybody wants to bring up specifically under item 8 this evening? Richard.
I was at a party on Saturday afternoon, and one of the people there asked me about the allotment list. And is there a list of a waiting list? Are there allotments about to become free? She said she's been on the list for at least 18 months, and doesn't appear to have moved up the list at all, which I'm rather surprised at. So I said I would find out.
So this is a Jubilee allotments to be specific.
Yes, hard to tell. Yeah.
That's a good job, isn't it?
Good job.
Please.
There is a waiting list, and yes, it is a long waiting list. I know she hasn't been on it for a year because I think about 12 months is used on it.
Do I share the name of the person there?
We can do.
No, right.
Not appropriate, but
No, but so at the moment, Sally and I took a decision a few months ago to not add anyone to the waiting list either,
No.
because there's just no point.
Too long.
Well, we've got it down to about 8 or 9. However, it's probably been 8 months since we've just had one come available, and that's only because the lady's moving back, going somewhere. You know, she's moving out of the area, and that's now 8 months. And so, yeah, there's no point putting anyone on the list at the moment. Someone emailed in today actually, and I said, you know, try again in the year. In the new year, there's just no point going on a list,
No, she's
because
not.
it's going to be at least 18 months. If you put you on the list today, it's going to be at least 18 months.
She is on the list, right?
Yeah,
And she said.
but people
She's been
don't.
told
People
several
just don't.
times she's only fourth on the list, but things have changed, so she wonders why. That's all.
Things haven't changed. She said. No one ever gives them up. I think that's the thing. They don't give them up. And
Okay.
so that's probably why she hasn't moved on the list, because I've had one being given up in probably the last 10 months.
All right, I'll come and talk to you.
Sharon.
So there's 2 spaces at the glebe allotments just become available, I think.
Is that the ones that Dave Harris runs?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's 2 that have I just saw it on the WhatsApp group, there's 2 that just become available. So
Yeah.
I think that you organised, or Sally did, for me to get one there. So
Yeah, so last time
Thank
Dave Harris came to us and said that he'd had some, and so I sent an email to the group, the waiting list group, and said, and I think so thank you for letting me know. And what I'll do then tomorrow is I'll email out the group again and to say that 2 have come up.
It's worth checking with him first to make sure he wants to open it up. I think he may be asking us
Yeah.
that, but yeah, there are some.
Yeah, I think Dave is quite strict on on his boundaries as well, where he lives as well. Yeah. And so yeah, but thank you. I'll message Dave tomorrow. But in to answer Richard's question, if you know, when you see that person again, just say that you can check with me later. They are on the list. It just doesn't move. People don't give them up. It's that simple.
Brilliant. It's great there's such a demand for it. And also Hugh will be touching briefly on potential another facility. He's looking alarmed. I'm sure he'll be touching very, very briefly on this later on with the item agenda that he's doing for item 13. It's a possible area for allotments within the Winterbourne Parish. Okay, so moving on now to the transport report.
You ask questions from council.
Please, yes, so I didn't see anyone else raise, but please do, John. Yeah.
So I did raise it with you earlier, but I just think that as a parish we ought to have a policy on pecuniary interest and non-pecuniary interests in things that are put forward. Whereas there may be a pecuniary interest in something that you do that should prevent you from voting. But if you've got a non-pecuniary interest, I know a lot of parishes do have policies to this end that don't prevent you from voting and discussing on things. And I just, as a councillor, I just think I would like to see that those two things are made clear. So, for example, Hugh's talk later, you're declaring an interest on it. I have a non-pecuniary interest because I'm in French A, because I might go and help them do some of the work if they ever get it. But as a councillor, I just think we ought to be able to differentiate between those two things.
Okay, that's a very good point, John. And I said it is because of the potential interest I declared earlier.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
wanted to try and cover everything. You're absolutely right. As I said, you know, there is nothing financial within my membership of the French Preservation Society that affects what Hugh was saying, but I just wanted to cover. Very good point. I think
it's completely non-pecuniary interest, which won't prevent you from voting on it and from discussing it.
I think it's something, thank you for that we can bring up with Sally and Sarah so they can look into the guidelines as such and see if we can expand exactly, Tim, into exactly what...
I was just going to pick Charlie's point up in the group form. It is something I'm quite familiar with lots of other roles.
I'm sure.
There is quite a bit of statutory information that sits behind a lot of these things around personal pecuniary interests. And I can remember back, he's still the legal officer at South Gloss, and his advice to any members would always be, you are better to declare something than not. I note always that Trevor and Nick declare an interest as South Gloss councillors. I think perhaps there is something that is almost taken as read, is that we are all members of the parish, and therefore, yes, we don't need to declare the fact that we are parishioners, because we're duly elected to conduct that. But there is quite a bit behind that. I've got some stuff tucked aside, and we can have that to separate debate or
yeah, I do. I know that a lot of parishes do have that policy clear. So there's clearly a pecuniary interest. You cannot vote, you cannot discuss it. Non-pecuniary, very detailed definition. You can discuss it as non-pecuniary, and you can vote on it. And I did send
Thank you.
on the weekend.
I'd be happy discussing that. I wouldn't absolutely verbatim agree with your last sentence, but I understand where you're coming from.
Thank you, Charlie. Yes, as you say, there are, the extract that you gave us quite clearly shows the difference between the pecuniary and non-pecuniary and the financial side of things. So, yeah, we will. Hugh.
Chair, just very quickly, because I think it's relevant to what Charlie's just said. We had a very good example of this earlier in the year when the museum planning applications come out for A, a site visit, and then B, a decision at South Gloss Planning Committee. And to square that away, I contacted Paul Johnson of Democratic Services, and in 2 minutes I had an answer. It was, you won't be the first councillor to be wearing more than one hat when you introduce the subject for the site visit, which was an information meeting, effectively. And when you present at planning committee, you will be presenting to the decision makers.
Yeah.
I think that was very clear.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Thank you.
That's good.
So if you forward that email on to the office, then we'll look at that specifically.
I'll send it.
Thank you. Just to clarify, is there any other councillors that would like to bring up anything? Thank you. So the clerk's report, Sally and Sarah have done. So matters are arising. The response has been received from South Gloucestershire Council to our letter concerning the matter to need to incorporate renewable energy measures within planning applications in order that the climate emergency targets can be met. And this has been forwarded to all councillors, that hopefully everybody has read. Thank you. There is an open South Gloucestershire online consultation, a vision for the North Fringe, which you can see the link for there, and the details have been sent to all councillors. And the next note is a total of 6 Jubilee cakes that were ordered and distributed, as mentioned earlier, to the Grove, Blossom Care Homes, St Michael's Church, All Saints Church, Waxhill Evangelical Church, and Frenchie Parish Church. Again, thanks for everyone that organised the distribution and ordering of those. And lastly, the Winterbourne Evening WI has put a stunning arrangement of artificial flowers to celebrate the Jubilee that you may have seen, which is on the green opposite the co-op. I think Sarah's going to go and take a suitable picture and do as well. So again, thank you for everybody for the involvement everybody has done for the Jubilee celebrations. Right, moving back to the agenda. So item 10 to approve the monthly accounts. As you may know, Sally has got family responsibilities at the moment with her husband. So if we can bring those forward to next month, please, to approve those, to carry them forward. So item 11 is to approve the annual governance statement for 2021-22. So members happy with that one is approved?
Yeah.
That's rejected. Yeah. So I shall do them after to everyone's happy with that. And also to approve the accountancy statements for 2021-22, which the office has been working on. Yeah. Okay, show of hands. Thank you all very much. I'll sign those shortly. And item 13 is to consider the future management of Tucket Field in Frenchie, which I've discussed with snippets, and I shall hand over to Hugh. Marvellous.
Please pass them round, and while they're going round, Chair, can I just make it clear that I'm speaking as Chair of Frenchie Preservation Society, long-term Vice Chair of Residents Association, and more recently installed as Chair of Frenchie Tucket Society, which is the registered charity that runs the museum.
Thank you, Hugh.
I thought that this, thank you Tim for giving me a cue, we would get this one out. It was in great demand at the weekend, and some people, when they'd had their fill of other music and stuff, went off on a walk, particularly some youngsters who
Would you like to share them around here? Is that okay?
Yes,
you need another one? I have one.
Yeah, it's a spare one. So.
If you want to pass it on, yep. On the main centre fold, as I think things called, page 22, which I'll come back to, but Tucket Field I've underlined so you can see it. I thought it would be just useful for a moment to give you an orientation. Just behind the Tucket Field, or at the top north of the page, is the Parish Hall, and our nearest neighbour is the National Trust. And that's quite important because there's another landowner with a lot of interest. I have brought along this box to remind me that there are 3 reasons why I am suggesting that we should consider the future management of the Tucket Field. The first one is that the current tenant has expressed to the chair that next year may or may not be an automatic renewal from his point of view. This is Will Weaver. And I think the first thing to say is that for many people having cows in the field, we've already touched on it, it helps with the grazing. It's been a nice sort of rural idyll I'm not going to stray into the history of the accuracy of it, but what I would say is that I brought a lot of stuff from guess where, Frenchay Village Museum, that in the most famous book on Winterbourne from C.H.B. Eliot, very quickly it says that the Tuckett family had lots of ideas about it, I paraphrase, and then when the male Tuckett died in 2013, his widow, who had associated herself with him in his various activities in the parish and in connection with Friends Meeting House, continued to take the deepest interest in the welfare of the parish, and she subsequently conveyed to Winterbourne Parish Council the field in which the village hall stands, in the provision of which she and her husband had taken a prominent part. She died in 1928, and so that's a very good reason for mentioning that we've got an uncertainty about next year's tenancy, and we are only 5 years off the centenary of the deed of gift to the Tuckett Field. And we are collectively the custodians, and I know that's reinforced by a registered charity, which I discovered online. And I think Richard's nominally the titular head of that, from what I discovered.
Really?
New submission.
There's a surprise.
Okay. What I'd just like to read out very briefly, not to delay the meeting too much, because I'm simply proposing that we should consider the future management of the Tuckett Fields. So I'm turning to page 22 and I'm reading item 49. Tuckett Field, on your left is a ha-ha. I assume we're all familiar with that great landscape feature. Francis Tuckett owned all this open space down to the river and replaced the hedge with a sunken wall and ditch to open up this magnificent vista across to the woods on the other side of the Froom, which provides such a dramatic backdrop to much of Frenchay. He was an expert botanist and raised and imported many of the fine trees in Frenchay and Downland area, a tradition continued by his son, Francis Fox Tuckett, in whose memory the Saddleback Field was left to the people of Frenchay for their enjoyment in perpetuity. The National Trust property starts at the hedge, trees in just inside the field, 3 Atlas cedars and an Austrian pine. Much use has been made of holm oaks and evergreen oak, much beloved by landscape gardeners in the past, and the old English oak, standing on its own near the brow of the hill, has a lightning scar right up to its trunk. Now, I did indulge in a bit of telly-watching, and I brought this along to remind me that on Thursday, after Trooping the Colour, as they were filling in a bit of time before the great fly past, no less than Alan Titchmarsh was commenting on the Queen's interest in all things green and the canopy that she's promoted, and how she wanted it to be for the future, etc. And he mentioned there were oaks standing in Windsor Great Park before the Norman Conquest. So 3 things have come together, guys, about the potential future. Uncertainty over the tenancy for next year. A lot of interest in how the environmental plans are changing, and a centenary coming up in 5 years. And my proposal was a very simple one. Could we consider whether the time is right, with that tide of 3 things in history coming together, tenancy, green and a centenary, that we should consider the future management of Tuckett Field and take it to the next level for the enjoyment of people in Frenchay in perpetuity. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugh. This is something that, as I touched on earlier, it may be something that we get a different type of proposal coming from a potential tenant for the use of this in the future. So we will have another presentation, or rather a presentation that Hugh's done this evening, that members will have a proposal on that we could vote on at a future stage if this actually comes to fruition. So I think rather than voting on it, I think members are generally happy with the principle of it. Can you say that, Tim?
Yeah, if nobody else wants to speak. Thank you, Paul and Hugh. Sorry, said to me, so Paul's
How
happy.
much do you get?
I'm very supportive of how Hugh's put this. For those that were at the last F&GP meeting, we did touch on it very briefly, as it's minuted to that end, that F&GP, which is where I would see the work being done, were all keen that a discussion took place, that various options were considered almost in a process chart, where, as Hugh said, agreed to look at different options, and how you go about consulting with members, parishioners in Frenchay and across the area. So I'm very supportive of opening that up, taking it through F&GP, and depending on what we come up with a solution, what the process then is to take that forward. Thank you.
Adrian.
Yeah, it's just to really reinforce some of the things that Hugh has said, and I think there's more to it than just making changes for some of the things that are significant, and also acknowledging that probably over the last couple of years I think it's deteriorated significantly, and I don't think the tenant has looked after it properly in accordance with how it should have been maintained. And I think we have a fantastic opportunity here to show our intent to get our nature plan going and to make this a significant asset to the parish. At the moment I think it's looking sorry for itself and it needs a lot of attention, and we need clarity in terms of having a proper plan to manage and move this forward over the next 5 years, as you has said. It's vital that we do this, otherwise I think we can look at it and say we haven't maintained it properly.
Thank you, Adrian. I say it's something that we discussed out of the local nature action plan discussions, and something we made a lot of time well for that issue you're touching on. Thank you, Charlie.
Yeah, just to reiterate my support as well for this to go forward to F&GP and then to be discussed with lots of other things. But just in the meantime, the vistas that you talked about, you cannot see. So as you walk along the common, you cannot see the vistas because of the growth of brambles that he's been written to on at least 3 occasions now. At least 18 months ago, we got the email from 1 year ago from the clerk. He was contacted also in December of last year. He was given 3 months to do the work, to remove the brambles. He still hasn't done it. The brambles are now taken over so much of the area. Not that we want all the brambles gone, but they shouldn't be along the Harhar, because it's completely ruined the whole vista there. It's taken over all the way around Tucket Pond. It's just, the brambles have just taken over down there. Should we not be saying to him, I know we've got all these things going on, can you get on with it or get out? Yeah, why should he be allowed to put cows in that field and pay us his £100 nominal fee? He's not going to do that. He shouldn't. My view, and I think that we probably ought to discuss that, is he shouldn't be allowed to put any animals in that field until he's complied with the terms and conditions of his lease, as Adrian says.
Okay, thank you, Charlotte.
If anyone agrees with that one.
Yeah, I think it's something that obviously Sally and Sarah can put forward again to him. If needs be, I can phone them up and run through again the maintenance that is required. It's something that I have said to him previously in the telephone conversation, but the maintenance needs to be done.
We've written to him 3 times as well.
Indeed. I think the thing is, technically within the lease agreement, the tenancy agreement that we've got, I think we read into it separately. There's different interpretations of exactly what is written to, but nonetheless we will take that forward to the office and they will chase it up, and if needs be, so I will speak to him myself. Okay? Anyone else have anything specifically on Hugh's presentation?
I think it's very sad that the cows will no longer be in Tucket Field, but I can quite see that this chap has not done what he's supposed to do, and a change is now necessary. So I'm totally in favour of turning it away from farming use and turning it into a proper facility for the public.
It may be, Richard, that there will still be the need for some cattle to be there as part of a future presentation. The one thing that has been discussed is the number of cattle that's required. And you remember the boundary as such with the National Trust land that's just beyond it, with their schedule of maintenance that they think is proper management of it, is part of the restrictions why the cattle can't graze in that area. So there may well still be the need for cattle, but say that will be at a future presentation. It's difficult. There's a number of people in Frenchay at previous meetings who said, I'd love to see the cattle coming back in the field. And other people obviously say, I find them intimidating, the dog walkers have an issue. So it's not a blanket, everybody loves it in Frenchay, but it's something why we need to think about future management of it, as Hugh and others have touched on. Adrian.
I just wanted to answer Sir Richard's point more accurately by saying that if you follow the 5-year plan on Frenchay Moor, which is where the National Trust are, for the size of land that Cleckfield represents, you would have maybe a maximum of 7 cattle, and then it would be a sort of a rare or special breed that's lighter. So I think there's every opportunity for us still to have cattle, but for it to be done in a conservation way, rather than be done where there's over 30 that are just completely wrecking it.
I can't see that that's financially viable for any farmer, to be honest.
It wouldn't be a farmer.
I think Sharon touched on this earlier.
Must it be, excuse me, cattle? Can it be sheep?
I think, again, thank you for that, Ryan. It's for a future presentation to actually see and manage. So,
I know some young budding farmers would jump at that with their little herd of sheep.
Okay, interesting. Going back to what Hannah was saying, I'm sorry, what Sharon was saying, that one of the reasons with the conversation that I had with the farmer is that it isn't financially viable for him to have a certain amount of stock in there. There has to be a multiple to make sure that it actually is viable for him. So I would suggest that therefore from the feedback you've had this evening that it isn't. So it's not, the amount of rent he pays relatively to that is not commercially viable for him. So that's a separate point. Hugh.
Chair, thank you, if I may, the members for their interest. Could I just say to you, I forgot to mention the allotment.
I was going to touch on this.
Thank you. It was just to say that there is a proposal, and I'm aware that it would carpet F&GP. Now we seem to be giving a policy steer to F&GP, that there is a proposal for another allotment in Frenchay, but I didn't want to get into the detail, and I know that there are other things that will have to come out of that, including probably consultation.
Indeed, yeah.
And finally, if I may, Brian, may I refer you to the Bristol Mercury of the 15th of April 1843, where there is a case of sheep stealing in the very same field.
I'm sure you've got this copy to hand at home, haven't you?
I thought it was 1895.
Different case.
Okay, thank you. So as you said, it may be that the allotments, if it is a proposal that we're willing to take forward, we are suggesting we have to have some form of public consultation, probably the village hall, that everyone within the parish, and particularly obviously Frenchay people, will need to put forward their pros and cons as to why they think the allotments may or may not be appropriate at that area that we are suggesting and looking into. Thank you. Item 14 we have covered. So item 15. So anything considered urgent by the chairman. There is one bit of AOB that I have been informed by from the office this afternoon. South Gloucestershire Council, one of the officers, is discussing the idea of the walk to school, the stride to school, and using your legs and cycles rather than cars, which we would all obviously prefer to use that for fitness and the environment and so forth. One of the things that she potentially saw as an area within Frenchay, the new Frenchay school, which is due to open in September 2020, is the area next to the museum, which was the car park area that was left over from the North Bristol Trust history. So that area is potentially going to be used by the brain injury rehabilitation unit at a future date for their staff parking. So at the moment, we will, I think as a council, reply to them and say that that area that she's identified probably isn't suitable because of potential future use. Are members happy with that reply that we do through Sarah and Sally? Marvellous. Thank you. So, is there anything else that anybody would like to bring up under item 15A and B? No? In which case we will close the meeting at 20:02. Thank you everybody for attending. My medication was
I could see it.